I've never been what you'd call a gamer. Sure, I own a console. It's outdated by now. I like to play the odd game. But that's about it. I'm almost 40. Old enough now that when I was at the height of my gaming years, all that really entailed was getting together with friends to play Mario or Castlevania or Excitebike or Punch-Out. Maybe Sonic if a friend had a Genesis, which no one does anymore. Keeping up with the latest trends in gaming was never interesting to me. I have a lot of interests. Reading, watching movies and television, listening to music. But gaming, it was never a hobby. More like a pastime. Like most pastimes, I don't really understand when someone makes a lifestyle out of it. Today, the gaming scene isn't aimed at the casual gamer. You get accused of being a N0B if you aren't up to date on everything. It's almost a religion. So I leave it alone, and have been content to do so for several years now. For the most part, the gaming world has also left me in peace. There was one time, however, when the gaming world decided not to leave me in peace. In fact, the whole experience was enough to turn me off gaming for life. It happened at a pretty low time in my life. I had just had my ex-wife file for divorce from me, and I had moved back in with my parents while looking for a new place to live. I had recently gotten a new job after the one I had been at fired me for all the time I missed due to divorce proceedings. My new job was as a systems analyst for a major company. I was one of many, a cog in the machinery, but I had been in a few jobs like this in the past, and they all operated differently. Some of them you only had to care about while you were there, while others expected you to bring your work home with you, and I had not yet figured out which kind of job this was. So when the call came, and I didn't immediately recognize the voice or the number, my first inclination was that it was probably someone at work. My mother answered it, and I heard from across the room a male voice ask if Brandon was there. Mom handed me the phone. "Hello," I answered. "Hello, is this Brandon Coates?" "Yes, who is this?" I need to confirm some codes." At this point, I still thought this was a work call. I didn't recognize the voice at all, but I didn't know everyone at the office yet. Maybe this guy needed me to confirm my employee ID or something. Or perhaps he needed to make sure I had all the access I needed for the systems I was going to be helping maintain. "What sort of codes?" I asked. "Look, the fucking codes you provided aren't working," said the voice. At this point, I began to realize this wasn't a work call. I was momentarily stunned, unsure how to respond to this jackass who was already getting hostile with me. His next words removed any doubt that he'd gotten the wrong Brandon Coates. "For NBA Live, on Xbox 360. I'm only barely aware of the game system called Xbox. I've never played a game on it, nor did I ever plan to. Also, my job had nothing whatsoever to do with game systems. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm pretty sure you have the wrong number." "Don't fucking lie to me." The dude was really angry now. More angry than he should be over something as simple as dialing the wrong person in the phone book. "You're Brandon Coates. You said so. Now fix these goddamn codes or fuck you, fucking brain daddy punk." "Okay," I said. "I'm hanging up now. Don't call me again." He was still yelling as I hung up. I didn't give the matter a second thought. Likely the guy was just pissed and said some things in the heat of anger that he would regret when he calmed down later. But a couple of days later, I got another call. This time my father answered it, and after a moment, handed the phone to me with a concerned expression on his face. I took it and said hello again. The voice on the phone was not the same man who called before. "Brandon Coates?" Speaking. "Listen, fuck you, brain daddy. You're a fraud and a joke. If I see you again, you're fucking dead." I couldn't help it. I got pissed. "Listen, fuck nugget, you've got the wrong guy. I told your buddy a few days ago that I'm not the Brandon Coates you're looking for, and this call is harassment." "Yeah? You like it? Want to suck my dick?" I hung up. I almost couldn't muster the restraint to keep from hurling the phone across the room. "Who are these people, Brandon?" my father asked. The look on his face made me realize that he was concerned, not for his son who was being harassed for the crime of sharing a name with another guy, but concerned about his son who might be involved in something dangerous. I hadn't said anything to them about the last call other than wrong number, but a second call, from an obviously different person, cursing me out and threatening me. Dad was sitting close enough to me that I know he heard the other person's threat. His suspicions were raised. My parents and I get along okay, but to say they haven't always been on board with things I pursue is an understatement. For one, they were against my marrying my ex-wife to begin with, and several times in my life I'd had money problems. I could tell by the way my father asked, "Who are these people?" that he fully expected me to answer, as if I knew. He likely thought they were money lenders or worse, wondered if I'd started selling drugs or something. The truth in this case would truly set me free, at least as far as he was concerned. "They think I'm this other guy who has the same name," I said. "They keep calling me Brain Daddy. They think I'm involved with the Xbox 360 or something. I have no idea what they want, but they won't believe they have the wrong guy." "Well, these calls need to stop, son," said Dad, the tone in his voice exactly the same as the one he used to use when I was in school. "These bad grades need to stop, son." Just the same tone, like the calls were my fault. I honestly didn't know what to do. Contrary to whatever my father's suspicions are, I have never been involved in any criminal activity, and I didn't know how to deal with harassing phone calls. Also, a naive part of me thought the calls would stop on their own. That sounded like the easiest way to deal with it. And for about a week it was. And then, one Saturday when I had nothing else to do and both parents were gone, the phone rang. I took one look at the caller ID and let it ring. The number and caller's name were blocked. It would most probably be someone calling for Mom or Dad. I had made it a point to not answer their phone if they weren't there. After all, I had a cell phone and most people who needed to contact me would use that. My parents are very old-fashioned people. They don't have voicemail. In this case, it was probably a good thing they didn't, or it would have been them that heard the message. They still had an answering machine, as if it was still 1988, and like all answering machines, it didn't give a shit about privacy. Blasting through the house loud enough that 2 senior citizens could hear it no matter which room they were in, came the following message. "Granddaddy," drawled a gravelly voice. The person on the other end sounded either like they had just woken up, or was drunk, or had a bad cold. "I saw you at GameCon. So beautiful. It was like lightning through my penis, man. You're gonna take my dick up your ass so soon." There was more, but it was just muffled curse words. I let it finish, and then I immediately erased the message. I decided it was time to get serious. Clearly they weren't going to stop. I could hardly believe what was going on. These people, all of them sounding like young men in their early 20s tops, had taken what I was starting to realize was an online vendetta way over the line. Their actions were bordering on illegal, and I knew I had to do something before they decided to, who knows, show up at my parents' doorway armed. I fired up my laptop and Googled Brandon Coates, Brain Daddy. Search results were plentiful. The first 3 hits were nothing close to what I was looking for, but the third had the headline, "Brain Daddy Brandon Coates gives his opinion on Call of Duty Black Ops." There was more, but that was all I needed. Clearly this was the guy that the assholes calling me had thought they had reached. I opened the link and read a little way. It turns out there was a guy in my city, a really young guy by comparison, who did indeed have my name, and who was apparently quite the gaming guru. I'd never heard of him because I wasn't a gamer, but if I were, there's no way I wouldn't have known who Brain Daddy was. He had a following on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and several gaming websites, wherein he would offer advice, reviews, offer cheat codes, etc. Apparently, he was one of the most sought-after game reviewers in my area. He had made friends with some of the most influential names in the gaming scene, and from what I was starting to pick up on, he had also made several enemies. Finding his email was no challenge. As luck would have it, he did have it listed on his Facebook page. It was probably a business address, maybe one that he didn't even personally check, but I didn't care. Even if one of his subordinates read it, they would at least take the message I was about to send seriously. Mr. Coates, you don't know me, but we have the same name, and apparently this is enough for several severely misguided people to confuse us. Over the past few weeks, I have received several harassing, threatening phone calls from people who believe I'm you. I neither know, nor care what you did to piss them off so badly, but I urge you to take action to get this all to stop. You appear to have resources to contact your followers, and if I were you, I would use those resources to inform them that they have been contacting a person with your name and behaving in an illegal manner. If these calls do not stop, my next step is legal action. I have a feeling you don't want that. I urge you to take this seriously. These calls stop, or you'll hear from my lawyer. I know what you're probably thinking. Why blame him for this? Why threaten him with legal action? After all, it wasn't him that had made the calls. No, it wasn't. But I know a thing or two about online flame wars, and I know that generally when it's reached a level like this obviously had, both parties likely share blame. If legal action was being threatened, this other Brandon Coates would take me seriously. It turns out, I really should not have done that. The next call was not to my parents' house. It was to my cell phone. I wasn't able to answer when the call came through. I was at work. In fact, I didn't even see the call until my lunch break, when I checked my phone and saw a waiting voicemail. My call history showed one missed call. Naturally, it was a blocked number. I had no way of reaching the person who had left me this message. Of course, I knew who it was. My heart was hammering in my chest, more with anger than with fear, but I was a little afraid too. Whoever these assholes were, they had gotten a hold of my unlisted cell phone number, which I had only recently acquired, after changing cities to move in with my parents, and which I had in no way, shape, or form put online, even in an email. I went to my car and retrieved the message. I sat there feeling hotter than I should considering it was snowing outside, and listened. The voice that spoke was deep, raspy, haggard, and barely qualified as human. Hello, Mr. Brandon Coates, aka Brain Daddy. Obviously you don't know what's good for you. You think you can fuck with us, but you're wrong. We know where you live. We've watched you sleep. We're watching you right now, as you sit in your car. You will never see us, but we always see you. You belong to us now, fuckball. Your worst nightmare has only just begun. Cold sweat broke out all over me. I was shaking. Never in my life have I felt such fear. My head began to whip around, looking at everyone who was passing by where my vehicle sat, just on the side of the road, less than a block from my office. That guy in a gray suite, was he looking at me? No, he was looking behind my car at a female jogger. What about the seemingly benign homeless man just a few feet away? Or what about that guy about to cross the street? My gaze went past the man waiting to cross. Behind him was a silent, still figure, staring straight at my car. No one else seemed to notice him, but I couldn't help it. He was short, almost dwarfish, and his proportions were strange. One arm was longer than the other, and his head and neck sat at a strange place on his body, almost to his shoulder. He was wearing a Halloween werewolf mask. In shock, I straightened in my seat and blinked my eyes a few times. When I looked again, he was gone. My phone rang just then. It sounded to my stressed ears like an air raid siren. We've let you see us, Brain Daddy. I hope you understand we mean business now. I swallowed. Clearly, this person would not be threatened by legal action. What do you want? I croaked. We want you, said the voice, to die. There was silence on the other end for a while. I thought the person had hung up. And then, but first we will kill your parents. First your mom, and then your dad, so he can watch her die. Then we're gonna kill your cheating whore of a wife. Then we're gonna kill your brother. When everyone you care about is gone, we're gonna kill you. Why? I heard myself ask, as if from far away. Why are you doing this? Because you don't know who to fuck with and who not to fuck with, Brain Daddy. You don't know the kind of deep well of shit you've disturbed. Apparently nobody told you the kinds of things we can do. Or maybe you don't believe we can do them. I hope you believe now, Brain Daddy. I swallowed again. I was totally dry, so it felt like my throat was rubbing against sandpaper. I thought this was just about cheat codes or something. It always starts small, said the voice. It kept getting deeper and more evil sounding. If Satan ever spoke to me, I imagine this is what his voice would sound like. High-minded shits like you think you can scam and never get caught? We're here to show you just how wrong you are. You have no idea how badly you fucked up. The line went dead. I spent the rest of that week in a cloud of fear and misery. I could hardly eat. I could barely breathe. I didn't dare call the police or try to warn my loved ones of what was happening to me. I knew they were watching. I knew that one false move from me would only hasten the punishment they felt I was due. I spent most of my time at home staring at my laptop screen, wondering what I could possibly do to end this hell I had found myself in through no fault of my own. And then, in the corner of my screen, a chat window opened. I hadn't used MSN chat for over a year. Most of the people I used to keep in contact with were no longer a part of my life. I had forgotten that the program was in my startup list and constantly running in the background. At the sight of it, I felt the panic rise. My vision blurred, and for an instant, I was certain it was these people again. These faceless people who were always watching. But the screen name was Brain Daddy. Here's a copy and paste of our chat. It was still logged in under my now ancient screen name, Drink PBR. Brain Daddy. I'm so sorry, dude. Drink PBR. What the fuck, man? Brain Daddy. I can't stop what's happening. Brain Daddy. Real sorry. Drink PBR. What's happening? I can't breathe. I'm afraid to go outside. Brain Daddy. It's complicated, man. I can't really explain. I never meant it to hurt people. Drink PBR. Dude, I warned you that if you didn't make this stop, I'd get the police involved. Drink PBR. Who are these people? Brain Daddy. Nothing the police can do. Drink PBR. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Brain Daddy. Listen, I don't have much time to explain. They were after him, but I pankissed and told them I wasn't me. I saw your name come up on Facebook and I said it was me. Drink PBR. Okay, first, your ass is so sued. Second, your smug fucking face is plastered all over these gaming sites. How did you manage to tell them I'm you? Brain Daddy. They don't see like we do? Not really? Can't expound much better? They're not like us. They love to play games, but they hated it when you offend them. Told them once to go fuck themselves. Now they want me dead. Drink PBR. No, they want me dead, asshole. And they're watching me right now, so don't tell me they don't see. Brain Daddy. They hear you and they smell you, but they don't see. Like I said, it's complicated. That's why I'm messaging you. If you don't talk, they don't know. Drink PBR. Just tell me who they are. I don't want to spend the rest of my life afraid. Brain Daddy. That's not how this works. You don't get to escape. They say they're coming for you, then you're dead. Drink PBR. You escaped them by telling them I was you. Brain Daddy. Got lucky. There was another Brandon Coates in my city, but we're the only two. Except he was quite wrong about that. He was the only Brandon Coates in the city. I was, in fact, born Warren Brandon Coates Jr. I went by Brandon because my father went by Warren. I quickly logged off the chat room and went to work. I went to my Facebook page and changed my name to Warren Coates Jr. I did the same to my Twitter name, my LinkedIn resume, my email address. I changed the voicemail message on my phone to, "You've reached Warren," etc. I pulled out my driver's license and smiled, seeing that my name read Coates Warren Brandon Jr. And I waited. It wasn't until the next day that I heard from them again. I let the phone ring. Eventually it went to voicemail. I waited for over an hour before I had the courage to retrieve the message. It was the same voice, but the tone of his message was light and friendly. Oh, sorry. I must have the wrong person. I never heard from them again. After a few years, I was able to relax finally, convinced that I was safe. Yesterday I Googled Brandon Coates, Brain Daddy again. The first hit was his obituary. That suited me just fine. Fuck him anyway. I awoke to the sound of dripping water. It was coming from somewhere in the kitchen, the open door just a few feet away. The smell hit me, just as pungent as it was when I went to sleep. My eyes started to water at the pure concentration of the odor, and the nausea set in. How long had it been since I arrived here? A week? A month? It sure felt like forever, but time was useless for me, since I knew however long it had been wouldn't affect how long it would be until I could leave. I heard the muffled humming, coming from a distance. It was him. He was on his way back. As he got closer, I heard the scrape of the rifle's rusty old barrel against the dirt. He was humming the song he always did when he caught some fresh game, and I could hear the pleasure in his deep grumble of a hum. His boots were hitting the ground with a satisfying thump, and he sounded in no way of a hurry. The steps got closer, and I heard him walk up the creaky wooden porch towards the old door. The door opened slowly, but with purpose. The man, who was built big and stocky, with large hands and feet and more hair on his chest than a werewolf, walked slowly towards the kitchen, still humming his tune. In his hand I could see a dead rabbit, its lifeless body dangling like a deflated balloon after a birthday party. He walked through the doorway, and I heard a loud plunk as he set the rabbit down on a wooden board somewhere. I had just started to realize how hungry I was. I couldn't remember the last time eating. When the man came back out, I let out a faint whisper. "Please, please, please give me something to eat." The man looked at me and gave me a creepy smile. A small chuckle came out, and then silence. "But you haven't even started performing for me today." I knew this meant that I wasn't getting fed for a while. The blisters on me hands and feet were killing me and looked infected. If only the chain wasn't so strong, I could probably break them and make an escape. The man went back into the kitchen, and I heard him open and close the refrigerator. He walked out holding a cold beer and slowly made his way towards the couch in the room across from me. He sat on his couch, let out a great big sigh, and turned on the television. I was sitting there alone in the dark for what seemed like hours, hunger driving me insane. I tried again and again to slip my feet out of the chains, but was to no prevail. They were too tight around my bony ankles. I fell back to sleep, wishing it could all be over. After a few minutes, I hear him stomping up a staircase and possibly dragging something behind him. He shuts a door, and I heard the familiar sound of something locking. He makes his way over to me with a crazed look on his face. He is covered in blood from head to toe and is holding what seems to be some sort of kitchen knife. He walks back into the kitchen and drops his weapon into the sink. The man comes back out, still blood dripping from his beard, and walks over to me, holding a whip. He leans over, and I can smell the alcohol on his breath. "You want to be fed?" I give a small nod, and he unravels his whip. "Well, you are going to have to work for it." The way he said this deeply unsettled me, and I could tell that whatever was coming, it was not going to be fun. "Dance for me," he said, but all I could do was show confusion in my expression, as I had no idea what he mean. "Dance for me now." He this at the top of his lungs. I stood up and started moving my body, but I wouldn't call it dancing. The man took the whip in one hand, leaned back, and looked like he was ready to strike. With one quick movement, he took a hard whip at my feet, hitting the top of my right foot. I fell to the ground and started sobbing. He commanded that I get up and continue, and I tried my best to fulfill his orders. He again started whipping my feet until I started dancing as fast as I could. After about 5 minutes of this, I collapsed from exhaustion. The man gave one final chuckle and walked into the kitchen again, with a wide smile on his face. He grabbed the dead rabbit and brought it back. He put his large hands around the rabbit, one on its head and one right below the neck. He pulled until an awful sound of bones breaking and flesh ripping pierced the air around me. The head of the rabbit, now free from the body, was gripped in the man's right hand, like he was palming a basketball. He dropped the rabbit's head on the ground in front of me and said, "Eat up." He laughed his cackling laugh and walked back into the room with the television. at this point, was frozen in fear. The hunger was so overwhelming, but the sight of the decapitated rabbit almost made me lose my appetite. Almost. What I did next was unspeakable, and the sheer thought of it makes me cringe. When I was finished, I laid on the floor in a ball and cried myself to sleep. I still heard the man chuckling throughout the night and eating what smelled to be rotten meat. I awoke to the sound of dripping water. It was coming from somewhere in the kitchen, the open door just a few feet away. The smell hit me, just as pungent as it was when I went to sleep. My eyes started to water at the pure concentration of the odor, and the nausea set in. How long had it been since I arrived here? A week? A month? It sure felt like forever, but time was useless for me, since I knew however long it had been wouldn't affect how long it would be until I could leave. The small town of Ravenswood was plagued by a terrifying creature known as the Dogman. It was said to be a creature that was half man, half dog, with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp teeth. It was a creature of legend, but the people of Ravenswood knew it to be all too real. It had been attacking and killing their livestock for months, and the town was in a state of crippling fear. The citizens couldn't go one night without hearing the next dawn of one of their own being picked away in the night. Who among them, they always wondered, could stand against such a terrifying scourge? This beast, this Dogman, he'd proven to be too much even for the police to handle. That is, until one man decided to stand from the crowd. Jack, a young man known for his bravery and hunting skills, decided that he was going to put an end to this, but he couldn't do it alone. So, he gathered a team of the best hunters he could find in the town, far and wide, having displayed their skills in a test in a game hunt, and set out into the woods to hunt the Dogman. As they entered the woods, the atmosphere was eerie, and the air was thick with tension. On all sides, the trees around them were thick, close together, boxing them in. Looking around, each and every one of them, they knew there was no getting out of this forest. There was no turning back. Only they, or the Dogman, would be leaving alive. They knew they were facing an extremely dangerous creature, and they were aware this may be their very last game hunt. They set up camp and began to track the Dogman. They searched for days, but it was as if the creature had vanished into thin air. One night, as they sat around the campfire, discussing their next move, they heard a blood-curdling howl in the woods. They knew they had found their target. But where? That sent a chill down their spines. They quickly packed up camp and set out to track the howl. As they followed the howl deeper into the woods, the trees grew thicker and the darkness more intense. They knew that they were getting close. Suddenly they came across a clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood the beast. It was even more terrifying than the legends had described. It stood on its hind legs, towering over the hunters, and its glowing red eyes locked on its prey. Each of the men stood, despite each of them being hardened men, ones that had seen the likes of vile and rabid game. They had never before seen something so terrifying, so gargantuan, so tyrannical as the Dogman that stood before them now. They could feel, each of them, this thing's burning red eyes peering straight through their corneas, straight through their brains and into their hearts. "That's it," said Jack, his heart pounding in his chest. "That's the Dogman." The hunters raised their weapons and prepared to fire, but the Dogman was too fast. With lightning speed, it charged at them, its razor-sharp teeth bared, ready to rent flesh from bone, without even a single worry of them dulling. The hunters fired, but their bullets seemed to have no effect on the creature. "We have to take it down now!" Jack shouted. The hunters fought bravely, but they were no match for the Dogman. It was far too strong, far too fast, and just far too ferocious. Jack was thrown into the ground, and he thought that it was the end for him. He watched as two of his other companions had been slammed into a tree, instantly crushing their skulls to paste. The third, oh, the third. Jack watched in horror, as he, all he could do, as the Dogman lifted the poor bastard by his head and ripped it clean from his shoulders, dousing the both of them in warm metallic crimson. Jack had all but given up hope. There was nothing he could do. His men were dead, and the dogman would have him next. The dogman approached, the ground quaking in fear with every step he took forward. Snarling, the dogman opened its mouth. Suddenly, Jack remembered something his grandfather had told him. He remembered the legend of the dogman and how it may be defeated, for, like many creatures of native lore, they all bore a very distinct weakness to silver. With a surge of strength, Jack rose to his feet and pulled out a silver knife. The dogman turned to face him, snarling defiantly, and Jack plunged the knife into its heart with a furious roar. The creature let out a blood-curdling howl and fell to the ground, dead. Jack stood, adrenaline forcing his heart to thump and pound in his chest, harder than it ever could. "We did it," Jack said, his voice shaking with emotion. "The town is saved." He returned to Ravenswood as a hero. He was greeted with cheers and congratulations from the townspeople. Jack went to see the mayor to report what had happened. "Jack, oh God, Jack, I can't thank you enough," the mayor said, a look of relief plastered on his face. "The dogman has been terrorizing our town for too long. You've saved us all." "It was my pleasure, sir," Jack replied grimly. "But I couldn't have done it without the help of my men. God rest their souls." The mayor nodded. "You're right. This is a team effort. They were brave men who gave their lives, and I want to make sure that everyone is recognized for their bravery. I will be holding a town meeting tomorrow to present medals of honor to you and holding a commemorative memorial to the rest of your team." Jack couldn't believe it. He had never thought of himself as a hero, but to the town he now was. He felt a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over him. But their victory was short-lived, as they soon realized that the dogman was not the only creature terrorizing the town. The legend of the werewolf was also true, and it had been seen recently in the forest. Jack knew he would have to act fast before it does any real harm to the town. He set out again into the forest to hunt the werewolf. This time he was better prepared, and he had silver bullets on hand for when the inevitable time would come to face down the beast. He searched for days, but the werewolf was elusive. The werewolf was far more agile than the dogman before him. One night, he sat around the campfire, pondering his next move, when just as with the dogman, hauntingly familiar to him, a blood-curdling howl echoed through the forest. It was even more terrifying than anything he ever heard. It was a howl that would have even made the dogman before shudder. And before he even knew what was happening, its eyes, its burning yellow eyes, were fixed upon him. The young hunter, the hero, raised his weapon and fired. But the werewolf was far too fast, bounding from treetop to treetop. From one, it bounded like a panther towards him, with its teeth and claws bared. He furted his silver bullets. After a few, perhaps 3 or 4 misfires, his aim came true, and the werewolf let out a final howl before crashing to the ground dead. Jack felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had finally put an end to another terror that had plagued the town. He looked at it, and he looked back towards the town, imaging the same relief in the eyes of the townspeople. He had done it once again, and as he made his way back to the town, he was once again greeted as a hero. The town threw a huge celebration in his honor, and once more the mayor presented him with a Medal of Honor. Jack felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, but as he looked around at the townspeople, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. He knew that this was not the end. There would be other monsters out there, lurking, other battles he would have to fight. But for now, he was content to bask in the glory of his victory. As days went by, Jack became known as the Monster Hunter of Ravenswood. He was called upon whenever there was any kind of creature and kind of behemoth monstrosity terrorizing the town. And he always answered the call, ready to face whatever gargantuan behemoth that plagued the town. In the years that followed, Jack faced many challenges, but he would always emerge victorious. He became a legend in his own right, and his name were passed down through many generations of the town. But for Jack, it was never about glory or fame. It was about protecting the innocent and keeping his community safe. And that was a duty he would always be willing to undertake. no matter the cost. And so, Jack continued to hunt monsters, his courage and determination never faltering, always ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead.